And welcome to Thursday the 26th of March, Year 3 to Year 6 story of the day, where we're picking up again with Grandpa's Great Escape by David Walliams. And we left Grandpa at the top of the church spire and it was just beginning to bend. We wondered what was going to happen to him. So, Chapter 6, A Runaway Bulldozer. To Jack's relief, instead of snapping, the church pipe bent down slowly under the old man's weight. Twong! Eventually, it placed him safely on the ground. As soon as his slippers touched the wet grass of the graveyard, Grandpa marched over to the assembled group and gave them a salute. "Fall out, men!" Mum looked a little more than offended. "Wing Commander," said the boy, "please let me escort you to your car. We'll drive you back to your quarters shortly." "Jolly good show, old boy," replied Grandpa. Jack took him by the arm and led him to the family's rusty old car. As he opened the door, the handle came clean off. He put his grandfather safely in the back seat and closed the door once more so the old man could get warm on this chilly winter night. As he ran back across the graveyard, Jack heard Reverend Hogg say to his parents, "That man, he's not all right, is he? He needs to be locked up." "He's fine, thank you very much," said Jack, jumping in on the conversation. The vicar looked down at the boy and smiled, baring his teeth like a shark before it takes a bite. Jack watched as though a thought seemed to cross the man's mind. Suddenly, the vicar's voice changed tone completely. "Oh, Mr. and Mrs. he began again. "Bunting," replied Mum and Dad at the same time. "Mr. and Mrs. Bunting, in many, many years as a vicar, I have brought a great deal of comfort to the old folk of this parish, and I would love to help your elderly relative." "Oh, would you?" said Mum, immediately charmed by this slippery fish. "Yes, Mrs. Bunting. In fact, I know an absolutely smashing place he could be sent to. It recently opened after the previous old folks' home was accidentally demolished by a runaway bulldozer." Out of the corner of his eye, Jack caught the gravediggers smirking at this. The boy couldn't put his finger on it exactly, but he felt like something was very wrong here. "Yes, we read about it in the local paper," replied Dad. "A runaway bulldozer? Who would have thought it?" "I know," said Reverend Hogg. "How surprising." "You know what, Mr. Vicar," continued Mum, "I've been saying it to these two until I've gone blue in the face, and Jill at the cheese counter." "So you work at the cheese counter?" inquired Reverend Hogg. "I thought I could smell Stilton." "Yes," replied Mum, "one of our speciality cheeses. It's such a beautiful aroma, isn't it, Mr. Vicar? Like perfume, really." Dad rolled his eyes. "Anyway, so Jill is of the same mind," continued Mum. "An old folks' home would be the best place for him." Jack looked at his father and shook his head, but the man pretended not to notice his son. "Is it a nice place?" asked Dad. "Mr. Bunting, I wouldn't be recommending it if it wasn't," purred the vicar. "It's better than nice. It's like Disneyland for old people. The only problem is, it's so popular." "Is it?" asked Dad, also completely sucked in by the man's patter. Yes, very hard place to get into," said Reverend Hogg. "Well, that's settled then," said Jack. "He can't go anyway." The vicar continued without pausing for breath. "Fortunately, I know the matron who runs the place rather well. A lovely woman, Miss Swine, and rather attractive, I'm sure you'll agree when you meet her. If you wanted, I could ask her if your dear old grandpa could jump the queue." That's very kind of you, Mr. Vicar, said Mum. What's this place called? Asked Dad. Twilight Towers, replied Reverend Hogg. It's not far from here, just on the edge of the moors. I could call Miss Swine now and ask one of my boys here if he wouldn't mind running him up there tonight, if you like. The vicar indicated to the burly gang of gravediggers. That would save us the bother, agreed Mum. No, protested Jack. Dad tried to steer the family towards a middle ground. Well, thank you very much, Vicar. We'll have a think about it. No, we won't, protested Jack. My grandpa is never going into a home. Never. With that, Dad started ushering his wife and son towards the car where Grandpa had been waiting patiently. But as Jack was trailing behind, and just out of earshot of his parents, the vicar turned to him and hissed, "We'll see about that." Chapter 7. Disneyland for Old People. It was nearly dawn by the time they were all home. Jack managed to convince his parents that it was best that Grandpa stayed with the family for the rest of the night rather than return alone to his flat. The boy put it in terms he thought his grandfather would understand. Because of enemy in the area, the Air Chief Marshal has ordered you to move quarters. Before long, Grandpa was fast asleep on the bottom bunk of the boy's bedroom, snoring for England. The ends of the old man's moustache blew up and down with each breath. Unable to sleep, and still with his heart pounding in his chest from the night's adventure, the boy slid silently down from the top bunk. As was often the case, he could hear muffled voices from downstairs and wanted to listen to what his parents were saying. Expertly, he opened the bedroom door without making a sound. He sat on the carpet at the top of the stairs, one of his ears pushed between the two banisters. Mr. Vicar was right, said Mum. A home is the best place for him. Oh, I'm not sure, Barbara, protested Dad. Grandpa wouldn't like it. Did you not listen to the nice man? What did the vicar say about Twilight Towers? He said it was like Disneyland for old people. Exactly. Now I don't imagine there are roller coasters or log flumes or someone dressed up as a giant mouse. But it sounds wonderful. But the vicar is a man of the church. He would never lie, snapped Mum. Maybe it is like it, he said. But Grandpa has always been such a free spirit. Yes, said Mum. Such a free spirit that we find him up on the church roof in the middle of the night. There was silence for a moment. Dad didn't have an answer for it. Listen, Barry, what else can we do? Continued Mum. The old man is becoming a danger to himself. He nearly fell off that roof and died. I know, Dad said. Well, maybe it is for the best. That's settled then. Once and for all, we can drop him off at Twilight Towers tomorrow. Jack listened at the top of the stairs. A tear welled in his eye, and slowly, very slowly, it rolled down his cheek. And then tomorrow we'll read the next chapter and see what happens when they try to take Grandad to Twilight Towers.